Hi everyone. We'll try to keep you awake for another half an hour here, and I'll try to do it by talking about not something that is not really democracy, although it's related, namely corruption. As you may have noticed, there are these two institutes here in Gothenburg. There's the Quality of Government Institute and there is the V-Dem Institute. And the Quality of Government Institute tends to produce results showing that corruption is really what matters in the world, whereas the V-Dem Institute, as you heard today, tends to produce results saying that it's democracy that really matters. And since I was formerly affiliated with the Quality of Government Institute and now with V-Dem, I was trying to straddle this divide by actually developing a measure of corruption in the V-Dem survey. So that's really what I'm going to talk to you about, a new measure. So this is like an ad for something that we hope will be out there in the public domain as well, together with all the V-Dem data, but we're really working on validating this measure first. So I'll show you some tentative results, and I trust the data so far, and I hope you will too. This is co-authored work, I should say as well, with Kel McMahon and Brigitte Zimmerman. So the question I'd just like to address with this data is, has the world become less corrupt? And I'd like to point out the fact that we cannot really answer that question, at least not very well, with the extant corruption measures. They are designed in a way that either prevents comparisons over time or complicates comparisons over time. So it's hard with the World Bank, the TI, all that stuff. It's really hard to say whether corruption has changed in the world over time. So we're trying to address that by developing 6 questions about corruption, pretty specific ones. We asked about the extent of bribery and embezzlement in the executive, in the public sector at large. We asked about corruption of the legislator and corruption of the judiciary. As I said, we're doing work on validating this. So one positive sign is, of course, that they are strongly correlated, almost in the 0.90s, with the extant measures of corruption. Our experts actually agree among themselves how corrupt or non-corrupt they think a country is, also going back in time. And just by looking at the data, I think the cases that I know something about seem to make sense. But we're working on this. The one comparative advantage I would say that this measure has, or one of the greatest one, is that we then actually have a scale that is comparable back in time. So we can try to answer the question, has the world become less corrupt? And this is what the global trend line looks like for the 173 country units in V-Dem. So what you can see here is, maybe somewhat unexpectedly, that corruption has actually been going up for the last half of the 19th century. But there was a peak around the year 2000, and then it's been going down. So should we really believe that? Is the world actually more corrupt today than it was 100 years ago? I mean, these are not huge differences, I should tell you that. This is on a scale from 0 to 1, and I've sort of projected them so they look larger than they actually are. But still, this is an interesting pattern. There are some reasons to believe that corruption has been going up. One is related to democracy. We know that as you introduce sort of halfway to democracy, if you have a hybrid regime, as it's called, then you get more corruption. And we have a lot more hybrid regimes in the world today than we had 50 years ago. There is more money going around, the world is more monetarized, that's another reason to expect more corruption. There is a lot of privatization, that's another reason why it could have gone up. So there are some reasons to expect that. Are there some reasons to expect that it's been going down for the last 10 years? I mean, this looks like good news to you, right? The community, the aid community has really been working on preventing corruption. Well, wait a second. This is not a global trend. So here I just break it down by region. And here you can see that there are actually very few instances at the regional level that tracks this global trend. So just look at post-communist countries, for example, or look at MENA. Those are the two regions that remotely resemble that global trend, but both actually end up being as corrupt today as they were 100 years ago. Here are some other patterns in the data. So Latin America, East Asia, and Western Europe, for example, there is a secular downward trend over time, and it's pretty slow, as you can see. Here's a third pattern, and that's really the bad news for the communities be working on trying to prevent corruption, that those parts of the world that will be mostly trying to do this, corruption has steadily been on the rise. So it's actually the combination of all these country patterns that produces this global trend. What can we learn from this? Well, there are no obvious policy implications here, so I'll create three more general lessons. If we want to track the progress or lack of progress in trying to fight corruption, we should use an instrument, a yardstick that actually can track this over time. And I think we have this now for the first time. We should also, as you can see in all these slides, we should take measurement uncertainty into account. So there are actually confidence bound around those measures. They, for example, showing that the uncertainty about how corrupt the world was 50 years ago is much larger than it is today, which also makes sense. Third thing, we shouldn't expect corruption anywhere to move fast. So we don't have, we have very, very few instances of countries where we can really show a steep drop, or for that matter, rise in corruption. This is something that, this is very, very steady equilibrium. Thank you.